Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Peter here from AJS, and it's my delight to once again take you into a jeweller's workshop somewhere in Australia. And this week we're heading to sunny Geelong and Chris Sherwin. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Peter.
Great to have you on board.
Great to be here.
And I believe there's a little shout out you'd like.
Shout out to Sarah and everyone else watching.
Indeed, they're coming on board as we speak. So thanks everyone for coming along. Please, if you'd like to introduce yourself, do so in the comments. That'd be great. And today, Chris, we're discussing the options for creating strong ring resizing joints. Would you like to explain what that's going to be about?
Yeah, we're going to do mainly resizing upwards, so adding metal to a ring shank and making sure that the resize is strong. The joint is strong and there's no weakness in the joint, and just gives you a bit more flexibility in making a quality product for your clients.
Excellent. So where do we start, Chris?
Well, we'll start with the basics. We'll start with looking at a ring and deciding where the joint is, how to identify it, and what type of resize is appropriate. And then we'll cut the band open and we'll start placing in a piece of metal with the appropriate strengthening shape to it, and then we'll solder them into position.
Beautiful. So when you're resizing, obviously you can go down in size, up in size.
Indeed. You can
which is the easiest.
Yep. So going down is the easiest form. Yep. And because you're removing metal and you're just basically joining the original band together again. And that can be done in various ways, and we could do a whole series on that. But today we're just going to be going up, and we're going to be adding metal, and that can be a bit trickier.
Excellent. And just before we start, I'd just like to give a shout out to Deborah and Susie who have just joined us, amongst others. So yeah, please, if you'd like to continue to introduce yourself, that'd be great. And we'll get things underway, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And if you've got comments or questions for Peter and myself, please send them in, and we'll try to answer them during the program.
Excellent.
So resizing is all about usually working with a customer's job. People come in with all sorts of jewellery, as you know, and you want to do something safe. You want to know it's possible. Most resizers I find are coming in have got precious stones in them, so the ring has to be completely clean before it's resized. That can take quite a while, and you have to assess the construction of the ring. So I'll show you a few rings, give you an idea of how difficult they are to resize. Got a ring here. Hopefully we can see that on camera. That's a 3-stone sapphire ring, and the settings are offset, so they're not actually on top of the band. Get that a little bit closer. And that means the band can be manipulated and shaped without doing damage to the settings, because the band is really separate from the settings themselves. But that ring potentially can go through the fire. I'll make sure there's nothing on the gemstones, that they're perfectly clean, and that could be cut open and resized. A ring with a brown diamond in it. This diamond ring, the stone is actually over the top of the band, and if you look through the back, I can turn it around, you'll see that the band goes through the setting, but it doesn't go all the way through. So with a ring like this, we have to be careful not to stretch the setting and lose the gemstone. So again, it's possible to resize this. The diamond will go through the fire, but we would be adding metal to the back of the ring, and we'd be careful not to distort the setting and where the band meets the stone. Another ring that's possible to resize. This is a platinum ring with, these are rings I've made. This is a blue and pink sapphires. Again, the settings are over the top of the band, so you have to be careful here not to distort the settings. It is platinum, so you have to be very careful with heat, but that would be resized down at the bottom there. And as long as it doesn't come up too many sizes, that's perfectly resizable with care. I'll show you a ring I've just resized for a client that was a nightmare, and it just sort of shows you what you come up with in jewellery. This is the fully diamond set top with baguettes and brilliant cuts. And you'll notice that the baguettes look kind of a bit black at the back. They're a bit grey looking. They're not sort of super sparkly. And that's because the person who made this ring shouldn't really be making jewellery. If you look at the back of the ring, there are no holes for the stones. And so that ring, despite the fact that I had it in the ultrasonic for 3 days, trying to clean out the back of the stones, I could not get the back of the stones perfectly clean. And therefore, when it went through the fire, the oil and the grit on the back of the stones cooked onto the back of the stones. So again, when you look at a ring to resize it, you have to be aware of what challenges you're facing. And I knew that was the risk I was taking, and I had to actually call the customer and let them know that I couldn't be responsible for the outcome. So it got resized. I put metal in the back, brought it up a couple of sizes, but yeah, there is always risk. So they're all the things you have to assess, but make sure your jewelry is nice and clean before you start.
So Chris, can you always get a round ring after resizing, or sometimes do you have to?
I'd say 95% of the time, yes, not a problem.
Right.
But occasionally a customer will want to have, 10 or 12 sizes in a ring, and you may end up having to make a bit of a googie egg shape so that you're not distorting the settings.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just not possible. And some rings are not round to start with. So let's just talk about standard resizing. When you have a ring, these are just samples I've made in silver, and you want to, say, go up 5 sizes or 6 sizes, you need to identify where the join is in the ring. So to do that, after the ring is perfectly clean and cleaned, you put that gently through the fire, whether it's gold or silver, and you just gently heat the ring up, or part of the ring where you think that the join is, if you can't visually identify it. And we'll just heat the silver ring up a little bit, and we'll see if we can just oxidize this just enough to show where our join is. And this happens in silver and gold. So if you start to look at that ring, it might be difficult to get it to come into focus. I'll just heat that a little bit more. Perhaps a bit more from this side. Just cool that off so don't burn my fingers. But if you look at this ring carefully at the top, I'll try to get as close as I can. You'll see there's a silver discoloration there. Geez, awkward working with a second camera. But there's a bit of discoloration where the actual join is. See how close I can get that. That's a bit better.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
So you see a slight silvery, there's actually a black mark. I've marked it with text, but see that little slightly silvery strip there?
Okay.
On the
around
that is where the
around 1 or 2 o'clock.
About at 2 o'clock. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the join. And the reason you want to identify the join is because when you resize a ring, often you'll be given a ring by a customer and you'll ask them, oh, well, has it been resized before? No, I got this from Granny. It's never been resized. And then you'll heat it up and you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 joins in the back of the ring, and you realize it's been resized several times, because there's nothing worse than just taking people's word for it and cutting the ring through and putting a piece of metal in and realizing that it's about to fall apart because all these Lego blocks of resize are falling out. So very important to identify, if there is a join, where the join is. And when you do your resize, that's the first place you cut, because you want to cut out either the old join, or if there's a bit of old material in there, you want to cut all of that material out. And I'll show you a ring in a minute that I've done that too. So we'll make a start on this ring. I'm going to cut this ring open at that mark. So I'll do that now. And if you've got questions, please ask them. So I identified my join. So this is about a 1.8 mil sterling silver. I've now cut that join through where the solder was, and I can now start to stretch that open. So obviously I've had to do a calculation in my mind. How big am I making the ring? How big does the customer want the ring? So I guess before you start, you'd put on the mandrel, you'd work out what size it is, where you need to get to, and then you need to calculate how much metal you need to add. And that's usually roughly in the area of 1 millimeter or so per size. So
Okay.
You have to allow for metal. So I'm going to go straight to my second sample. So this ring has been cut through. It's slightly thicker material, but you can see the cut there on the joint. Get that a little bit closer to the camera.
Yep.
And I'm going to add a size to this ring and just show you how quick a resize can be done. So that's cut through on the joint. I put the ring on the mandrel and pull the ring down the mandrel so that the joint, my cut opens up. And then I'm going to place my prepared piece of metal, which is quite small, into that cut. Slide the ring off the mandrel, and as it slides off with the tension of the ring, it will pick up that piece of metal and grab it.
Can you show,
like a vice.
Can you show that, please, Chris?
And I can show that. So there's my piece of metal, which you'll notice is oversized. It sticks out either side of the band. It sticks out at the bottom inside the shank, and it's wider than the ring. Now, this is a very rough piece of metal, but what this does is it allows me to, as I said, because I've had it on the mandrel, I know roughly what size it's going to come up to. I'll sit that back on the mandrel. With that chunk of metal in there, I can go and look at the actual sizes on the mandrel, and that's presently showing size M.5. I think everyone can see that.
Yep.
So by having this additional material, I can solder this through and be confident I can get this up to size N or O, you know, half a size or a size further up. You don't want to be resizing a ring and finding that it's already too big, because then you've got to cut your resize out and start again. So by allowing a little bit of extra material, you've got something to forge up, shape, tap to size, and adjust, and then file away, and then you should have the correct ring size. So I'm just positioning that piece of metal so that I'm happy about soldering it through. Not too much protruding in any particular direction. Just make it as easy as I can for myself, and make sure that the two sides of the ring are lining up perfectly. Get that onto my soldering mat. So this is the most basic going up, if you like, resize that you're going to do. Adding a little bit of metal, solid chunk of material, and tap into size, needle file into shape. Hope everyone can see me soldering here. Yep, I think so. Getting used to Zoom again, Peter.
Yeah, good fun, hey?
Can be. It can be quite difficult too, especially when you're working.
Indeed.
So normally I'd flux that whole ring because it's a silver band. I'm trying to reduce the vice scale, but I flux the joint. Just turn that over. Make sure you don't have too much metal in the ring, because otherwise the joint can open up. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the band. I'm just hitting the bottom at the moment. You'll see the silver change color there, go quite dark. That takes the tension out of the ring. Then I work my way up towards the joint. Pick up my solder. One bead on that side of the joint. It's like the Great Wall of China here. I've got a little bit of metal right in the middle. Heat that through. And I'm using medium solder. Quench that off. Of course, you wouldn't do that if you had diamonds in the ring or gemstones. So as I said, it's all about risk. Oh, this is a lovely little sample. So you now see, sorry, normally I would protect my silver, but this is quite good for showing the difference. You can see where I flux the ring. I've got a nice clean joint in there. The bit of metal is fully soldered in, and it just needs to be pickled off to take the flux away from the joint. And then I can go about tapping shaping and bringing that up to size, making sure it's a nice round ring. As Peter was saying, you want to give a good job back to your customer.
Excellent.
That's a very straightforward, up one size without all the tapping. And you're adding metal to the ring, but it's a butt joint. It's a very straightforward type of resize. What we want to do today is something a little bit more complex, where we're going up perhaps a few more sizes and we want to create real strength in the joint. So the two joints I want to sort of cover today are sort of more of a zigzag joint. I've got a couple of sketches here. We've just done this one, which is a straightforward block of metal into a gap, and oversized, of course. And the points I've made for you are: check the ring for risk, so clean it, know your gems and take action, so know which gems you can put through the fire. Second point is prepare the insert material and allow for forging and filing, so make your insert material wider, thicker, longer, so that you can clean it off and then you can tap it up to size and shape. And then make sure you use the appropriate solder, which is usually a medium solder, because medium solder is a little bit more flexible, and hard solder joint is usually a little bit more brittle. But again, experience will help guide you to make that sort of decision. I'll just show you the two sizes we're about to do. We'll do the little zigzag one first. This one is one where we're going to cut a piece of metal and put a V joint, if you like, in the insert as well as the band. Hope everyone can see that.
We can.
We'll do that one now, and that helps lock the metal into your band, so you don't have to have binding wire or anything holding it. You're actually using the physical context of this V shape rather than just a straight bit of metal that can just fall out when the ring gets hot. So I'm going to take my first band, which I showed you before, and cut through the joint and opened up. And I'll just open that up a few sizes. Let's make it maybe about that big, quite large, maybe put in about 5 or 6 mils. I'm going to give this just a couple of taps to take a bit of the tension out of it. Might come up to about there, I think. So we've now got a ring with quite a large gap.
Huge.
And if I was to try to bridge that across with a skinny little piece of metal like this and try to somehow fit it in there, and for it not to just fall out, I'm going to be in all sorts of strife. So what I'm going to do is file this to create this knife edge zigzag joint. So I'm going to do that now. So you go to your ring mandrel, get slightly undersized to the size that you want to get to. So you take it down to roughly that size. You get the metal that you intend to insert into the ring. I'll just sit that on top. And you're going to measure the size of the piece of metal that you need to put in there, remembering you've got to keep it a bit undersized. So I've got it sitting on top. So I've got a piece of metal which is big enough. And I've got one zigzag on one end, and I'm going to have to put another one on the other end. So check my ring. I might just cut a little bit off this. Won't make it too long. That's another sample I've got. I'll use this bit here. I cut exactly the right length. So this piece of metal is actually square wire, slightly larger than the ring that I'm fixing, again, because I want to be able to forge its size. Look for a black pen, there it is. And I'm going to make it so long. I've already got a V on one side of my joint, so I've got a little V shape there, just a little chiseled end, and I've got a little black marker pen mark where I want to chop that off to size. So, doing great camera work there, Pete.
I'll tell you what, that camera there is coming up really well. It's excellent.
Nothing like an iPhone 8, is there? What are we up to? 14.
Yeah, I don't know if there's 14 released yet. Not sure.
Yeah, 14's out.
No, there you go.
Like I said, I need to get a haircut. I'm back in the old days.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Pre-COVID, a lot of things.
That's right. So I've cut that size. I'm now going to put a V on this end. So I use my file, come back about 1 millimeter, chamfer it to the center, and do the same on the inside. Of course, if you're repairing an expensive ring, which I'm going to show you in a minute, I did last week, then you really, really take your time. Because the fitting is quite important. Solder doesn't fill gaps, so you want to get that done nicely. And I've now got a very, very tiny chunk of metal. There it is, and it acts as a little V shape either side. So a little pointy arrow, both sides. So I'm now going to go to my ring band, and I've got to reciprocate that by having a little channel in my band to capture that V shape. So I'm going to go in with a little triangular file.
So how important is it that that matches exactly?
It's fairly important that you get a close fit. Do a saw cut first. Yeah, you can't have too many gaps.
No.
So I do a little cut right in the center of that wire, just to start my nice AJS escapement file. So it's good to have good escapement files and needle files. And I've got lots of them. If you see my desk in front of me, you'll see I've got files everywhere. Nice little starter cut. And then I'm going to go in with my escapement triangle. Sounds like I've got a bird in the room.
You're not having a tremor there at all, are you, Chris? Everything looks a bit shaky.
Yeah, I'm just so strong, Peter. The board's vibrating and the camera's moving.
Because there was a tremor on Monday, I think, down at Frankston.
Right. Yeah. I think all the way up from Japan through Papua New Guinea. So yeah, those tectonic plates are moving even as we speak.
Uh-oh.
It'll just be my bench moving. I've got a nice rubber mat on the floor to stop things from breaking when they drop occasionally.
Okay.
It makes everything shake. So you would do this on an expensive job. You really take your time, get this spot on. So, use your escapement files, use your triangular one. I've got several triangular escapements. I've got a safety edge I've ground onto this one. So I physically ground the edge off. You can take your needle files, and so that's a ground edge. And then I've got two edges that are got the coarse cut on them, and it allows me to get in very, very close to my jewelry to get a very sharp finish.
So while you're filing away there, I'll just invite our viewers, if they have any comments or questions, please fire away. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so this is done enough to just, it's not perfect, it's not as I would finish it off, but it just gives you an idea. I'll be able to lock this in and you'll see just how strong it is. Take the burr off the file edge, and I can either pop this on my mandrel or I can do this by hand. Just open that up. Yeah, not quite the right shape on one side. But I've now dropped that in, and that's holding because of that V shape. A little bit difficult to see. Should probably blacken the metal a little bit more, get a little bit closer. But that cannot just fall out because it's properly fitted to the band.
Yeah.
Strong as. I can tap on that. If that was a normal resize, it would just drop out. So very strong joint. Take your time, get it as close as possible to, I think you can just pick it up there, that little V joint.
You can.
Bright and shiny.
Great job.
And that's pretty well ready to solder. So the beauty of doing this is you've got a strong joint. You increase the surface area of the joint. So by having that V shape, there's more soldering contact. I don't need to use binding wire. I don't need to have a laser welder. I can put that on and off the mandrel multiple times and make sure I've got to the right size. With a loose piece of metal, that just can't happen. You can't put something on the mandrel with binding wire all over it. So that's ready to solve.
Advantages. Yes.
So if you've got any questions, ask them now. Now's your chance. So what I'll do now is do the second joint, which is a little bit more complicated. And I'll show you a ring first before I do that. One where I've done this already. If I can find it. Oh, it's over here. So this is a quite expensive piece of jewellery. Has a great history, this ring. This ring was given to the client by the people of Bendigo to the wife of the mayor of Bendigo when she first came to Australia in 1954.
Wow. The
first Royal Tour. So this is a gift from the people of Bendigo to the wife of the mayor, and it's still in the same family. So it's a sapphire, 1 3/4 carat sapphire, blue Ceylon sapphire with a carat of diamonds in the top. And this is a platinum topped ring, and the band is 18 carat white gold. So that's a beautifully handmade 1950s ring. Just a fabulous ring. That's what $14,000 will buy you.
And what are you doing with it now, Chris?
So I finished that. So what I did was I repaired this ring about 20 years ago. I had a couple of little arthritic balls inside. Don't know if people have ever seen that before, but I had two little beads of gold inside for someone who has arthritic knuckles. Have you ever done that before, Peter, on the online?
No.
So we could show that another time, how you can actually put little extenders inside the band to make it easier for people with big knuckles to wear a ring.
Right, yeah.
So I cut those arthritic beads out, which I put in about 10 years ago. And in heating the ring up, I could see there are 3 or 4 joins in the ring. So I've completely removed those, and I've added a fresh piece of metal for about 8 or 10 millimeters across the bottom of the band. So it has a brand new 1/4 band on it, that ring.
Okay.
That's a half round shank. So it would have been a rectangular wire went in, and then I piled it up when I got it to size. So that's where it's so important to clean a ring before it goes to the fire, because that is as bright and as pretty as the day it was ever made. Fabulous sort of late deco style ring. Beautiful ring.
Magnificent, with a great story too.
Yeah, great story to it. Yeah. The lady that owns is very proud of it. It was her grandmother on her father's side who was given the ring.
Okay.
So that joint was more difficult, and it's this type of joint, which I'll show you on my piece of paper. And we'll go to that camera, and you can see this ring, we're joining from the inside. So the piece is getting inserted from inside, and the little insert there looks like the Olympic steps when you get up onto the podium. Except bronze and silver medal are at the same height, and gold is at the top. And that's going to lock in, as you can see, that moves upwards. That's going to lock into the band. And again,
what's a good reason to use that joint then, Chris?
So good question. The reason I will do this is because not only does it give you greater solder area and a much stronger joint, but it also allows you to really tension the ring out exactly as you want to have it. So by popping it inside, it actually pushes the bands outwards before you solder it. And it has this little excess of metal internally, which I can tap into so that you won't see the joint when it's finished. So it's a really nice way. If you're spending the time, the customer will pay for it. You'll end up with a join twice as good as a normal resize. Makes a huge difference.
Okay.
So I've created one step on this. I'm going to create the second step. So you take your, we could go back to that other camera, please, Pete. Thank you. We take our square wire, obviously work out the length that I need to put into the ring. And I've started to shape this already. One side I've already cut. Turn it that way.
Yep.
There's my little step. See the little step in there? So it's a little square step. It's around about 0.5 mil left and about 1.5 mils chopped out of a 2 mil square wire. And I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I've already started my cut. I've got my initial cut going downwards. You can probably just see that.
We got it, yep.
Yep, there it is. And I'm going to cut further down, and then I'm going to cut in and cut that little square or rectangle of metal out to create my second side. So I'll do that now. My trusty parallels. Try not to cut all the way through, get too excited. Cut most of the way through there, turn that around. And very carefully come back in. You notice how I use the parallel pliers? Just to hold the material very securely while I'm cutting. And I'll finish this off with a square and a barrette escapement file. Cutting down towards the other cut, listening to the blade. Sound is changing. And I'm almost there. There it goes, flicks off. Lovely. So now I've got my two little steps on there. Cut that one off, and I'm just going to square that one up with an escapement file. Just tidy it a little bit. You can see the little step there. So get my trusted little barrette, nice sharp little barrette. All right, that's triangular. Better look harder. That's my barrette there with the safety back on it, and then the cut on the front. And this is a little beauty, this one. I love this file. Just square that up a little bit. Make sure that end's square. Make sure the bottom is nice and flat. A little bit further, I think. And then, of course, I have to cut the shape into my band. To match this, counterbalance it.
And how easy is that?
Not easy.
That's where experience counts for a lot, hey?
It does. It's
because you do it, you make the mistake, then you do it better next time.
That's right. And you learn a lot from your employer and from the people that you learn from, your mentor, and then through trial and error, you learn more. So this is a second band I produced a little while ago. So I've just identified the join. That's what I'm going to cut through now. Get rid of the join. And I'm sure everyone knows why we're doing that. Simply don't want to put multiple joins in the ring if you can avoid having just a simple join with two sides to it rather than three pieces of metal and joins everywhere, which can happen. That's gone nicely.
Good practice is like a jeweler would always just find the join and then redo the join through the join.
That's right. That little trick of heating up the band gently just to the point of oxidation of the copper will identify your joins. So in gold, you'll get little shades of purple and dark brown, and you'll see where all the little shiny bits of solder are going vertically down through the band. And it's just important to identify where they are because you're trying to make a living and you don't want to be fixing up what other people do. So if you find you've got too many joins in that ring, you need to remove it and talk to your customer and then remove all of the excess bits of metal and start fresh. You've got a good join then. So I've cut my band through and I'm just going to sit that little piece of metal on top there. And that's my Resize chunk on the top. I can see the distance it is. Obviously, I would have calculated how many sizes up I need to go to. So clearly, as I pull the ring down, look, I don't let it drop on the floor. I'll be running down in the jeweler's position then. I obviously need to pull that ring down to the point where it opens up to allow me to place my little piece of metal in there to fit into that joint. And there it is on the floor.
Oh,
so
you called it.
I found it. So I'm now going to go, just open that up. Again, practice and experience just to take the tension out. Overstretch it slightly and then release it. Should have made these samples smaller. I'm right at the end of my ring mandrel. I'll be on the silversmithing stake in a minute.
Uh-oh.
I'll be right. I can do this. So I now compare my piece. Oh, that's nice. It's going to go in there nicely. So I'm just going to sit that in there for a bit of fun. I've already popped that in, and you can just see how brilliant these things are. Go back to that other camera. Yeah. So I haven't even cut my band yet, but I've locked that little piece of metal in under tension. Just there you go. You can really see how it locks in.
Yep.
And it's just a bit short, short of the top. I want it to be proud of the top, but that is it's pushing against both sides of the ring and it's locking it into place really nicely. So I'll take that out now. And then either use my pen or use my eyes. I can guesstimate that through experience, just how big I've got to cut my reciprocating join for this to allow it to drop in. So it's a very small amount I'm cutting out of my original band. You can do this from the top, but I prefer to do it from the inside. So I'm going to come in about 1.5 mils. And I'm going to cut in just the depth of my saw blade. That's all I need to do, because the little tab on my Resize chunk is about the thickness of the blade, about 0.5 mil. Cut on that side, come to the other side of the ring, come in about 1.5 mils, about the size of my tab. Cut down about the thickness of my blade. Nice. Then I'm going to go in with a trusted barrette. You could use a safety edge file or any other type of file. Go into that cut. And remove what would be the tab. So are there any questions from anyone?
Not yet, but I'm...
Everyone's done this before, Pete.
I'm sure they're glued to their sets, aghast.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that tab is well underway. This has been done with quite a large O-cut barrette, but you could use your trusty little escapement file. And again, just filing down the height of the saw cut. Square that off. Barrette file is fantastic for this because it's effectively got a safety edge to it.
Yeah, Deborah agreed with me that she was glued to her set, aghast. So.
Well, good on you, Deborah. Hopefully you gained something from all of this. Although none of us really like to resize, I must admit. But these are handy techniques for doing other things. They really do teach you. Yeah, I mean, I'm a binding wire sort of a person. I love using binding wire. A lot of people hate it. But then there are times that I hate it too, and I want to have a different technique. And this is a great way of not using binding wire and still having fantastic control over your work. So there you
Well, to
go.
get back to that, to your ring sizing mandrel is a good thing, because obviously the binding wire would get in the way there. So
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to work with binding wire sometimes. So I've now got inside that ring band, you'll see the two little shapes I've cut, and they should pick up the tabs on my resize. So I'm going to pop that in.
this is the moment we've all been waiting for, Chris.
Gee, it works. Scary, isn't it?
All your years of experience on the line here.
That's right. A bit of a gap on this one here. What have I done wrong? Something. One side's better than the other, but I'll show you that anyway. I'm not too proud. Generally speaking, this is absolutely what I want to happen. So I'll show you that. Get as close as I can without getting blurry. Where is it? Very hard to use the camera this way. There you go.
Yeah,
Look at that. It's locked in. I'm proud at the top, so it's actually higher at the top, and that allows me to tap down and bring it to size. I'll have a little bit of excess on the inside, so I can file it out on the inside, just a tiny bit. And I've got a slight additional width there to file out on the sides once it's soldered into position. So that's absolutely perfect, just not quite fitted perfectly, but it's close enough to solder for me to finish the demonstration off. So that's a really strong join. No binding wire. I'm up around about Z+3, so I've come up the number of sizes I want to come up, and it came up. What's my size chunk of metal? It's 10 millimeters long. So I've effectively come up around about 9 sizes. So you could do that maybe from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sizes, not a problem in the world. And yeah, I'm really quite pleased with that. So I'm going to solder both of these, the 2 samples I've done, to show you that they do sit together when you solder them, because they've got that little bit of tension on them. Yeah, very, very happy with that. Super happy. So
Chris, what's the general cost for a resize? Obviously, there's a number of parameters come into it. So what could it start at and finish at?
great question. You always ask the difficult questions, Peter. I think these days I charge by the hour, because I'm probably one of those expensive jewelers that people don't like to come to. But I think people are probably looking at $70 to $80 per size at least. So, 10 sizes, potentially that would be, an $800 resize potentially for people if they're charging $100. So $864, so $640, $700 for a resize of that scale in gold. But as I charge an hourly rate. I find I know for years it's been one of those interesting conversations that floats around the jewelry world. What do you charge for a resize? There are recommended. I think the Jewelers Association of Australia have a recommended charging rate, but I charge per hour. So if I charge $100 an hour, it might take me 2 to 3 hours, and then for the metal, I add for the metal. So that probably doesn't answer your question very well.
No, it answered like a politician. Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's right, answering like a politician. But
now, Maria,
it's better for me to charge per hour and then charge for the metal I've used and give a client a range. I find if you commit to a size and then you use a lot more gold, or it takes you twice as long to do the job, you end up being out of pocket.
Yeah.
And I think, jewelry resizing is pretty expensive. So it's to do it well requires great skill, and I think you deserve to be paid by the hour. So that's what I tell my customers anyway. And they seem to believe me.
Well, and if they're a customer, by definition, they're happy. So
yeah.
Now, Chris, we do have a question from Maria. Thank you, Maria.
Oh, Maria. Hello, Maria.
She says, "Hi, Chris. If that was a stone set ring, would you anneal the band at all before sliding up the sizes on the mantle, or bend with pliers so as not to distort the setting?"
Again, it's that good question. I sort of covered that a little bit in the beginnings. If it was a ring like this brown diamond where the band goes through the setting,
let's go to the other camera.
Yeah, I'd have to be quite careful in bending that out with the pliers or using a mandrel to stretch it up, because I don't want to damage the band and the width of the setting under the stone. So it really does come down to the type of ring you're working with. This ring here, I'd probably slide up the mandrel and make a gap of 3 or 4 mil without being too concerned. Don't want to damage it because it's a brand new ring, but I would cut that open at the back. I'd put my finger over the stone and I'd use a nylon mallet to tap it up as I stretched it down the mandrel to open the gap up, rather than use pliers to manipulate the band. I'd actually use the nylon mallet and put my hand over the setting so I can judge that the setting is not opening up or anything like that. I probably once would have used pliers to resize, but I find that's a little bit damaging, and you can end up wrenching at the setting anyway. And as I said, with rings like this platinum ring with the shoulders on it, etc., everything's above the band. You do have to be very careful that you're not damaging the top area of the ring. So again, that one I might plier out a little bit because I don't want to be stretching this and then distorting under the setting. So it's a good question, and it's difficult to answer because every case is different.
Yeah, Chris, just on resizing. Oh, we have a comment here from Deborah. Is there any situation where you would remove the stone?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess to finish off on Maria's question, would I anneal the band? Well, if I thought the band was under a huge amount of tension and I was going to cut through and I had to add metal, I would probably, yes, anneal the band as close to the stones as I could. And in terms of Deborah's question, yeah, it was about stones, wasn't it? About.
Yeah, is there any situation where you would remove the stone?
Yeah, I mean, the ring I just showed you, that $14,000 sapphire ring, the diamond ring, you're taking a risk if you put stones like that through the fire. So that ring was very complex. It took about 3 hours. I completely fluxed all of the diamonds with boric acid and made sure there was no flux on the sapphire at all, because the flux, we talked about this in previous demonstrations, the flux will eat into the sapphire. So there's a lot of preparation to protect the stones. If that was, say, a $50,000 sapphire, or, you know, it was absolutely irreplaceable, I would not put it through the fire, because sapphires contain inclusions that are liquid and gaseous, and they can expand and shatter the stone. So there's a lot of experience required when you work with gemstones. I guess I'm lucky. After 40 years, I've gathered a bit of grey matter in between the long hair. And I did once resize a 5-carat pink sapphire that was worth $25,000, and the sapphire changed colour. And I wasn't quite sure what to do.
The owner wasn't Stevie Wonder.
No. So exactly. So I actually re-annealed the stone on a couple of occasions. I carefully re-annealed the stone, and it eventually returned back to the same colour pink that the client gave it to me.
Oh.
And I've realised my whole life, but I realised there's risk when you put very large stones through the fire. And obviously you don't put, you know, aquamarines and emeralds and sensitive stones through the fire, because you're going to cook them. But if you have to resize a ring like that, then it gets complex. You just simply bury them in wet sand. I don't know if you've done a demonstration at AJS on that, but you'd simply have a little metallic container, fill it with sand, wet the sand. You'd put wet tissue paper around your gemstones or your onyx or your lapis lazuli or your emerald. You'd sink it in the wet sand, and you just do all of the soldering at the top of the band. But that's also a risk, because heat does transfer.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult question to answer, because every different case will have a different answer to it. And I'd suggest, if you're uncertain, have a mentor, have someone you can talk to, share your frustration or your concerns, and someone with experience should be able to tell you this is the best way to go about it. But yes, there are gemstones, you definitely remove them from the ring. They're just too valuable.
Yeah, Chris, the most common reasons for people to resize. So obviously a new owner.
Yep.
The husband's gone out and bought a ring, and obviously he got the size wrong.
All of those, yep. So engagement rings are the wrong size to start with. New owner. Someone's got arthritic problems, so their fingers have swollen. Their finger size has changed. They've inherited it. It's a gift. It was the wrong size to start with. I've just done one side of that ring. So this is the lock-in one with the step.
Because a lot of rings become family heirlooms, don't they? So they get passed through generations.
That's right. So that particular diamond and sapphire ring I just showed before, that has been passed down now through 2 generations. And every time it's had to be resized, and the previous owner put in the arthritic granules, and that suited her for 20 years, and she's passed away. It's now gone to the daughter, and she doesn't need the arthritic granules, but she needs it to go up 3 or 4 sizes. And then unfortunately I found all the resizes in it, so I had to then cut out about 10 mil. So that one's now done, and voila, no binding wire. That's all soldered together now.
Let's have a look at that one.
See that one? I can hold it correctly. So that's the one with the there's my shaky stand. Going to come into focus maybe if I'm lucky. Not that well. That's a bit better.
If you put your hand beside it,
yeah, I'm probably too close. So
yeah, that's a lot better.
That's now locked in and quite strong and ready to start tapping up to size. So I'll pick that off. That's ready to go, and nice and secure, soldered through. Should be no gaps and super strong.
So in the future, when someone goes to detect the join, they might think, oh, there's 2 joins. Could they? Or
absolutely. So when you hit up a ring, you can find there's 1, 2, 3. I've had rings with 6 joins in them. And one jeweler after the other has added a bit of metal or taken a bit out. And often when you heat up the ring, you'll see all the different colors of the various alloys that people have used, particularly pink gold rings. You'll see, or 1950s yellow gold rings, you'll see a slightly pink alloy and a bit more of a yellow gold, and all these different colors of yellow to red gold, and then all the different chunks of resize that people have put in. And again, that's just that level of inexperience. People have just come along and, I think that's a join there, cut it through and added their bit of metal, but they haven't actually heated up the shank just enough to see the color variation and to pick up all the various joins. And sometimes the customer won't pay for it, Peter. Sometimes the customer says, look, I'll only pay $200. And I'll say, okay, it needs to come up, 2 sizes. I'll charge you $200. And all those 8 other sizes that are in there, that are hanging in there, well, they'll have to live with it, I mean, as we know, gold is so expensive. The gold on that platinum and sapphire ring, that was over 1 gram of gold. I could have done a simple resize and put in 0.2, 0.3 of a gram, but I spoke to the customer and she said, no, get rid of all the old stuff, just do it properly.
Okay.
So you end up with just the 2 joins, one either side.
Yep.
Otherwise, there would have been 5 or 6 joins in there. But, going back to Maria's question, it's a great idea to gently heat the back of the band just to see what's going on in that sizing department. Who's been there before? It's kind of forensic. It
is. That's great. It's like the rings on a tree.
It is. And if you know what's come before you, then a bit of experience and the noggin kicks in and you know where the risk is, and you can get a beautiful job. You can make a really lovely job. So important.
Excellent. So that was a great demonstration there this morning, Chris. People were transfixed, so thank you very much for that. And I'm sure they'll enjoy watching this in the future as well.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And good practicing. Practice makes perfect. And if you're unsure, just send Peter a question. I'm sure I can answer it for you through email or something. But take your time, make great jewellery, be confident. You can do it.
Gee, what a positive way to end. So thank you very much for that. And Cassia says amazing demonstration. So thank you to Cassia, Deborah, Susie, Gail, Yasmin, Dawn, and others for your participation this morning. Really appreciate having you there. And we'll see you next time.
Me too. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone, for being there. Cheers.